Hi, Team 7 Blue. This is the plot diagram for the historical fiction narrative unit. You'll notice that for our Regents classes, the plot diagram is out of 20 points. So, what we're going to do is think back to quarter one when we learned how to complete a plot diagram. The beginning of the story is the exposition. Then we get into the longest part of the story, the rising action. The climax is towards the end of the story. Then we have a brief falling action and a very brief resolution. So the tip here is when you are completing the plot diagram, which you'll do over the course of 3 days, I would suggest, just as we did in quarter one, complete your work in this order. First, fill in the exposition, then jump to the rising action. I'm sorry, nope. Just seeing if you're paying attention. No, do the exposition, then jump to the climax, then go back and fill in the rising action, falling action, and then the resolution. So here is what you should do. For the exposition, it's very important that you focus on the beginning of the story. What is all the background information that the reader needs to get? So we need to know the setting. In order to get full credit here, please don't just state the setting. Don't just state a time and place that the story is going to begin in, but describe it. So give us some details about not only what year is it, but maybe how will the reader know what year it is? And give us some details about where is the location where the story is going to begin. Maybe describe what it looks like. Then get into mood. Same thing. You can't just state the mood. Don't just say that the mood is scary or the mood is whatever it is. Please describe it. How is the reader going to be able to infer what the mood is in the beginning of your story? Main characters, name, and basic description. So I would suggest to tell us about any characters that we need to know about in the very beginning of the story. Obviously, this will be your main character. And think about how the story is going to begin and if you're going to have maybe a conversation with somebody or some sort of interaction with a character. If it's someone who's rather insignificant, maybe it's just, I don't know, they cross paths with someone briefly, but they don't really have a conversation, or, it's just someone who works in a store who's really not important, or whoever, then you don't have to include them here. But definitely give us at least the main character and describe them. For some reason, students tend to say, oh, Mary, age 41, brown hair. We're looking for something a little bit more than that. Tell us about Mary. Who is she? What does she do? Does she have children? Is she married? Does she have a job? What are her interests? What does she tell us about her? So that would be for this section here. The next one is conflict. Do you remember what a conflict is? A synonym for the word conflict is problem. What is the major problem that your main character has in the very beginning of the story that the entire story is going to be about? So again, don't just state it. In order to get full credit, describe the conflict, that main conflict. So it's probably something very significant, something like, that they're trying to get their freedom, and explain what does that actually mean? Freedom from who or from what? Or they are escaping something, or they are trying to discover something, or they are trying to reunite with someone. What is that main journey that they're going to go on over the course of the story? Really describe it. Give me a few sentences there. All right. Then remember, I want you to skip over the rising action and go straight to the conflict. The climax. The climax is the pivotal moment of the story. Please do not write a paragraph here explaining first this happened, then this happened, that no. What exactly is the big turning point of the story? It'll come towards the end. Maybe, Mary is reunited with her father, finally, after being separated for so many years. Maybe Mary dies in battle, or Mary's brother dies in battle. or Mary comes to some very important realization or discovery, or whatever it is, that moment should only be explained here 1 to 2 complete sentences. Please explain what that climactic moment is going to be. And it should be somewhat related to your conflict. Whatever that problem was in the beginning of the story, the outcome of that is going to be revealed in the climax. Like, did they achieve their goal or did they not? It's going to be something super, 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 super exciting. Okay? Then you'll go back and fill in the rising action. This is asking for, oops, this is an error. It should be 3 to 4 situations that will happen to the main character. And remember that these should all relate to the conflict and lead them to the climax. So if we look at our diagram here, remember how rising action, it's going to be like they're making a little bit of progress on whatever journey that they're on, and then they have a little setback. They're making a little bit of progress, and then they have a setback. So think about what would be a few of these advances, a step in the right direction, and then they have a setback. Step in the right direction and then a setback. Okay, so just think about that and come up with 3 to 4 of them. Then hopefully that'll lead us right up to that climactic moment. Like the last part of the rising action should leave us wondering. We should be on the edge of our seats. What's going to happen next? And then we get into that climactic moment. Right after the climax, the falling action is when things start to wrap up. So if the climax is, say, that there was a battle and somebody gets shot, the falling action should be what happened right after that. So maybe the climax needs to be something a little bit more severe where you find out if the person lived or died. And then the falling action is, okay, so how are people processing that information now? What is happening after they find out about that character's death? Okay, it can't be like the falling action is that they died. Nope, that's too exciting. That would be the climax. So just make sure that you sort these into the correct categories. And if you're not sure, ask a teacher. So falling action is going to be where things start to come down a little bit. After that exciting moment, all right, things are winding down. What happens now after the climax? And then the resolution is going to be, again, pretty brief. It says the very, very end of the narrative, there should be a paragraph that either has the main character looking back on their experience, if they're still alive, or the paragraph will tell how life is now different after the conflict has been resolved. So remember, the resolution quite often will give us some indication that time has passed. It might say something like 6 months later or 1 year later and give us a little insight into the future and how the characters have moved on since then. So give that some thought and write 1 to 2 complete sentences about the resolution. So this is it. This is your assignment for the next 3 days. It might not even take you 3 days, but I want to make sure that you're following the directions and ask good questions as you go along.